Curtis McConnell and Michael Brown are the picture editors for Welcome to Wrexham. I am Matt Noble from Gold Derby, and I want to kick things off by asking you, what was the biggest challenge in editing this series? And we'll start with Michael.
Well, one of the challenges that we had initially early on was, knowing where to start the story. To be honest, it took a long time to figure out, Rob and Ryan were interested in this team, a year before they took, ownership, and there was a lot of things, a lot of time spent filming, an entire year before they officially took ownership. And so, really trying to figure out where you're going to start from was something that initially was took a great amount of time before we actually figured out where we wanted to start and how we wanted to condense the time before they bought the team. um that took some time and some process of, like, there were several versions of a first episode, to get to the one that we ultimately got to.
Curtis?
Yeah, well, like going off of that too, Rob and Ryan, I think they had a vision to make this something very special and unique, as did all of us, and I mean, any project that's going to be innovative in some way is going to have a lot of challenges in it, because it's like, we all have worked with a certain bag of tricks, and you dip into that here and there. And we use the tools that we've learned, like, over the years and stuff, but I think the collaboration of all of the different visions and stuff that we've had to make something special was it was a lot of work, but I think in the end it really paid off. And so, like, the vision Rob and Ryan had, and the vision that our showrunner John Hennian and us editors, like, we all collaborated so much on it, and I think the end product speaks for itself. So
It's a show about football club and football matches. It's also a show about a community and a town and the people that make up that town. And so how did you go about choosing where to focus on the town and when to focus on the football, and how they intersect?
I think we definitely relied pretty heavily on our field team for some of that. Like, they did such an amazing job. Like, you can see just visually, the cinematography in it is just stunning. And then even the way, like, the interviews and stuff, like, they were embedded for months at a time in the town of Wrexham and really got to know those characters. And so there's a lot of communication between post and the fields in that way. And look, my allegiance in the show was really to the town. Like, I wanted to do the town justice in it. So it's finding those sort of connections, like, between the club and the town's folk, and, like, how those stories weave into the story of the club and the team, and eventually to Rob and Ryan as well. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of trial and error. Like, it's, we can try to sexy it up all day, but, like, it's a lot of, like, does this story work with this story? Yes, no, kind of, and it's just playing with things. So, I mean, Mike, I don't know what you think.
There's definitely, there were story points in which certain characters had more of a voice about, where they were at in the process and where the team was and the results that they were getting. Some of our town characters were much more outspoken at certain times. And I think that one thing that we had to really balance, and took really great care in, to Curtis's point, is that, we really wanted to honestly portray these characters in a way that, a lot of reality TV today, can be a little bit exploitative. And to that, these characters in all of the documentary series that I've worked on, I've never had so much footage to work with that was so incredibly honest and raw. and these characters opened up in ways that, you know, they were inviting us into their houses, into their lives in just this beautiful and pure way. And so, you know, we wanted to make sure that we weren't just, you know, fanning flames or having characters say things that would, you know, could be looked at as, you know, being overly negative or whatever, but really try to capture that purity within each character.
Yeah, like I can only imagine, because I think this is the case with a lot of documentary or unstructured reality series, how much footage you would have had. How long did it take to put an episode together with all, like, to go through all the footage and choose it and things?
Well, I mean, like I said, it was a long post process, you know, getting, I think there was, gosh, maybe 2 full years, but from the first hands that were put on it, you know, to the end. And, you know, it was a lot. You know, we had, you know, some amazing story producers and, you know, people that were helping go through footage and flagging things that came across as, you know, that could be really important and valuable. So, you know, we certainly rely on those people a lot. And you know, it was an interesting process time wise, because it wasn't really a linear thing. You know, we would put together an episode, and then the episode would sort of get broken apart and things would be moved from this episode to the next episode. And that was one of the things in the collaboration that, you know, we kind of had to have our heads wrapped around multiple different episodes, because, you know, if you pull something out of, you know, the third episode of the season, you're going to move it to the fifth. Well, that changes, you know, the storyline. And so there was a lot of kind of it just, we had to stay communicating on, you know, nonstop kind of basis.
And it was interesting too, because like I remember working on, or at least getting my hands a little bit on episode 1 while episode 18 was being edited. And so it was like it spanned over the whole thing. And at the same time, it was like, you know, episode 1 that was like constantly being worked and reworked. And then I remember cutting episode 17, which was the FA Trophy final episode that's like at Wembley, and it's a whole big thing. And I remember cutting like the rough cut of that in like 2 weeks, because it's one event. It's, you know, like this is the whole thing. It's all insular, takes place all together. And so like there were a couple episodes like that too, where it's like, oh, they're completely self-contained. This totally works. And then there's other ones where it's like, no, this is much more sprawling. And, you know, so yeah, I mean, it's, you know, just varies, and yeah, we just roll with it.
Now, you guys, and congratulations, are nominated for an Emmy Award for Outstanding Picture Editing for an Unstructured Reality Program. And the episode that you submitted, the episode you're recognized for, is the season final Do or Die, where we see them playing off for promotion into the higher league. What was the biggest choice you guys had to make in the editing room for that episode?
I mean, I think the biggest thing was, you know, telling the story of the final match in you know, in a nonlinear way, interjecting the stories, you know, as we're sort of, you know, the season, for anybody watching, could have gone onto Google and figured out if they lost, you know, because it happened, you know, in the previous months. So, you know, the challenge is, you know, something that maybe some people know what the result of the game was, maybe some people didn't, but you know, telling it in a nonlinear way, the game was so exciting, there were so many goals back and forth, that it kind of lent itself to this structure. And our showrunner John Hinion was, you know, really adamant about making sure that we were telling this story and wrapping up characters at the same time. So you know, the choice was, how do you insert these characters in ways that doesn't feel like you're foreshadowing too much that they lost the game. That for me was one of the harder choices.
Yeah, Curtis.
Yeah, I mean, similar sort of thing. You know, like we had, you know, towards the end there's we've been following so many characters, not only the players, but also like the townsfolk in that. And, what you get from the show, it's pretty obvious, is just how much identity these people have, like in this club. Like Wrexham is the club is Wrexham. And and so like, yes, like the match, like obviously we had to play that out and kind of sort of close the loop of the league and the season and everything, but there's also all of these these side characters, like we had to close those loops. And so yeah, I mean, it was a big collaborative thing right there at the end, sort of figuring out interesting ways. Like Michael did I think that he did like that initial pass of like the sort of flashbacky moments of like going back in time or flashing forward, and we kind of all just sort of ping ponged off of that. But I think that it does make for like a much more satisfying ending than just like sort of playing the match out just kind of as it happened, which was, I mean, in and of itself a very dramatic final match. But yeah, like those the personal journeys too, just I think just reinforce like how much the wins and those losses in particular, like what that actually means. And at least for me, I mean, it was like, I think the way that we sort of structured it right there to the end, it was like, yes, the result might not have been what they wanted, but the sense of hope that came back to this town, I think, was a really important thing. Like it, at least for me, it did not feel like it ended on a down note or anything like that. It leaves you with a feeling of like hope and excitement for the future. Like it was a place that this town hasn't experienced in a long time, and that was, I think, really what we were really pushing towards.
And boy, the sort of choice to have sort of the result of the match revealed through the lady folding shirts and the supporter folding her shirts at the end of the season was a really creative and choice. Like the tempo was like, it was so high, that the tempo and pacing up until that moment, and then just have a moment of sort of quiet and still to sort of reveal how the season went. I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, that was all Curtis. Curtis had that section of the episode, and I think he did a really great job. I mean, I think, freezing time, it's almost that moment, as every sports fan, anybody who's watched sports, you're seeing it flash before your eyes, but to really sort of like hold on that moment and go into this quiet place was, I think, a really inspired edit choice for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I remember cutting that scene, and like this happens probably more than I want to admit, but like actually getting like emotional, like even listening. Her name is Annette, the woman folding the shirts there at the end. And I remember like getting teary and like misty just like as I was cutting, which for me is always like, oh, that's a good signal that like there's something here. But it was definitely a big swing. And again, credit to John Hennion, our showrunner, and Rob and Ryan and like the whole team of like, yeah, let's try it. Let's go for it. It's we'll see how people respond. So
yeah.
And what's interesting about that particular character too is that, she was, early on in the season, because they have such care for their club and their team and their community, there was a bit of fear that Rob and Ryan were going to come in and just, kind of splash around some cash and, make a big thing about it. And then what would they be left with? And, I think for her journey, she's a great example of somebody who really, by the end, we were able to sort of, again, capturing her true, vibes and feelings throughout the season and how she'd grown. She was folding her clothes up, but she was optimistic, by the end. And she was, yes, it's not the same Wrexham. We did it. We bungled it at the end again. Next year's going to be the same thing again. They came out with such optimism, and I think the ending of the episode is really special, and I think is one of the things that people have really come to love about the series, is that I think they see themselves in these characters. So yeah, it's great.
Sorry,
Yeah.
one other thing that really made
go.
that moment was the sound design and the sound mixing in all of that. I think was like what really sort of put it in a different level.
I'm talking to one of the sound guys tomorrow, so that'll be fun to talk to him about that.
Nice.
Yeah. And I think with what you're saying, Michael, about the relatability and stuff, like, even though I'm probably not as organized as Annette, sort of folding up all my sports shirts and things at the end of a season or whatever, there is like that feeling that if you're a sports fan, you have, where at the end of the season, when your team's knocked out or has lost a game, you've got to take off that jersey, you've got to put it in the wash, and like the feelings that go through, you sort of doing that. So I thought that was a really, really nice moment. What with the Emmy nomination, what does that mean to both of you? And also the show got 6 Emmy nominations, so that's awesome.
It did get a lot, yeah. I think it was, I don't want to say, I mean, it's a surprise, and an honor to be nominated and recognized, in all of these peer groups. I think that it's such, for me at least, when you're working on projects that are as big as this and have as much attention, on them, and the sort of, tears and sweat that it takes to put something like this together. It's just, I don't know, it's a payoff that is, I don't know, it's hard to put into words. Lost a little bit for them, but it's just an incredible, it really is an incredible honor.
Yeah, I mean, like, we're surrounded obviously by friends and stuff, and people that are going to tell us like, oh yeah, your stuff's great or whatever, and like, you've been, or at least I've been hearing that for like years, of like, oh no, I love that show. Well, but I think just like for it to be recognized, like, personally, is obviously, it's very special, it's very validating. The amount of like love and suffering that went into that season, it does feel like, oh, okay, it was worth it, and it was, yeah, like, I'm glad that it's like resonated with people. I think that was like my biggest thing, was like, we have seen how special this town is, the story, all of it, and we wanted like the world to see it, like I wanted America just to see like how special the sport is. I mean, it's the most beautiful sport, and I like any chance to, further that story is really exciting. And so, yeah, I mean, like, the Emmys, like, it's always been a dream of mine. This is my first nomination, and so yeah, it's a big deal. And for a project like this that is like so near and dear to my heart, just makes it that much cooler.
One of the other things also is, seeing the reaction on Twitter after it got nominated from the people of Wrexham, like another level of them being happy that they were in a series that was nominated for an Emmy. Like, they're like, it just wins all around for them. It's like, and they couldn't have happened to a better people in that town. And just, I feel like that's honestly, they're so giving. The men came and played in Los Angeles last weekend or 2 weekends ago, and Wayne actually was on the US tour with them, and so I got to meet Wayne, and like, in person. Like, I don't know if anybody could be more like a character when you see them on TV, but Wayne was like, it seemed like he was even more genuine in person. I just, for whatever, it felt like that.
He was like so confused why people wanted to take pictures with him, and I was like, oh, that's adorable, man, but you're like a star now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and like, I guess that's a real victory of the show, the sort of spotlight it's shown on that town, the story that's been able to be told about them. I think like a balance you guys also would have had is sort of introducing people to football who might not understand the sport, and the beauty of it, while still making it something that people who already know football well enjoy, and at the same time showing sport matches without it being like just watching a sport match on TV, like, telling that story in a different way, and sort of editing it together so it feels more like a film and less like just you're watching whatever network in America has
Yeah.
has football on.
Yeah, I mean, and that to speaking of challenges, I mean, that's something that, was a challenge as well, because you have a season, where there's a lot of games highlighted in films, and choosing which games and which stories you're telling, but also trying to, because, seeing, all of the events leading up to a match, the crowds arriving, the sort of setup to the match, you have play, there's halftime, and then, trying to make those feel different every time we see them, so that it doesn't just feel like, okay, this is a formula. Here's some crowds, here's people sitting in the stands cheering. Now they kick off, like trying to tell those matches in different ways, I think was a challenge, that I think we spent great pains to make it feel fresh every time. And then also, that the system of football in England, in the EFL, is such a different concept, for the American viewers. That was one of the real problems with our season one, or our first episode, was because, you can't just sit and explain for 10 minutes, every bit and every detail. You still have to sort of unwind it in a way that doesn't feel like I've just sat in school for 10 minutes, and like you get too many facts and too many things. So we had to kind of spread it throughout, which I think, in the end, I think we've increased knowledge about the game, like Curtis said, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and what was helpful was also Rob and Ryan being willing to like lean into their ignorance on everything, because I think that it helped like the American audience identify with them, of like, okay, no, like you guys don't understand, well, we're with you, like you can explain it like with us or whatever. So I think that like they were very helpful in really kind of breaking some of what is otherwise a fairly complex, sports system, make it palatable for us.
And in a weird way, it goes back to that relatability. I mean, just as relatable as the town was, I think, you have these mega stars and Rob and Ryan, and they become so relatable when they do play their, lack of knowledge as an asset, to themselves, and humbling themselves, just, by getting all of the people who do know, to surround them and help build this club. So it's very special.
Yeah. Well, Curtis and Michael, thank you so much for speaking with us today. We really appreciate it. All the best of luck with the upcoming Emmy Awards. People can go to goldderby.com to make the reward predictions and get in on the discussion. And yeah, just really appreciate the time, guys. Thanks for talking a bit of Wrexham with us.
Thank you, Matt. It's been fun.
Thank you so much, Matt.